Hello everyone and welcome to IDFA's webinar, Mindfulness, Mental Health and Self-Compassion. For people living with primary or secondary immunodeficiency, the emotional impact of ongoing health challenges can be significant and often invisible. This webinar brings together expert clinical insight and real-life lived experience to explore how mindfulness, mental health awareness, and self-compassion can play a vital role in managing emotional well-being and improving quality of life. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the people of the Dharawal of the lands on which we are presenting from today and pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We extend our respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who are joining us for this webinar. This webinar will be recorded and added to the IDFA website. The Immunodeficiencies Foundation Australia is a member-based organisation that represents people living with primary and secondary immunodeficiencies. We are a national peak body with more than 2,000 members. Our vision is a future where primary and secondary immunodeficiencies are diagnosed and treated early, with affected people supported by clinicians, community, and government to allow optimal quality of life. Our strategic priorities are education and awareness, care and support, building community, advocacy, driving change. We hope you enjoy this webinar and find it valuable. Joining us today is Jodie Cooper, positive psychology coach and educator. Jodie has spent 20 years building a successful coaching and presenting business, specialising in positive psychology and helping people become more positive, productive and resilient. In 2019, she set off on a road trip around Australia with her family. When stuck in Tasmania during COVID, she launched the Community Wellbeing Project that still runs today with a commerce degree, a master's in applied positive psychology, and an adventurous spirit. Jodie is on a mission to make the world a better place, one person at a time. Welcome and thank you for being here, Jodie.
Thanks so much, Crystal, and welcome to everybody else. It's a real joy to be here. Just to share some slides with you so that you don't have to look at my head the whole time. So today I'm going to share with you a little bit about mindfulness, mental health and self-compassion. It's probably going to be a roundabout way, I guess. Recently I had a knee reconstruction. And so I don't have any experience of an autoimmune disease. But for me, that knee reconstruction was like, I could do all of this stuff before, just simple things like shopping or cleaning my house. And all of a sudden I couldn't. I had no mobility and it was like this challenge. So it was literally like looking at a mountain that yesterday I could climb. And today I couldn't. And that sucked. It was really, really hard. And so there are a couple of layers in there that I think might be helpful. The first was mindfulness, like, actually staying grounded and present in the moment. The second was around being focused. So actually deliberately choosing where I pay attention to. And that's a huge part of mental health that I think gets missed. Most people just don't think about it or talk about it. And the third piece was self-compassion. And so I'll explain all of those things and why, it didn't mean that I could climb the mountain, right? That didn't actually change. But what did change is how I felt. And in terms of your mental health, that's the game changer. And I'm hoping today that that's a piece of the puzzle that we can play with. So I'm not big on definitions. So rather than actually whatever ChatGPT or dictionary version it, I thought about what mindfulness is to me. It's about being discerning about when, what, where, how, or whom you focus on or pay attention to. So mindfulness isn't just meditating and sitting cross-legged and humming for an hour. Mindfulness could be hanging out the washing, but actually feeling the breeze on your cheek or, noticing the bird flitting about. Mindfulness might be actively paying attention to a conversation that you have with a loved one, deeply listening and getting it. But mindfulness might also be a choice inside your head when things are hard, that you make a choice to focus on something that could be positive. It might be something that you're grateful for, but you're mindfully choosing where you put your attention. And I think that's it's a really interesting piece of the puzzle, because sometimes people get lost in meditation and feel like it's, a bit scary, or they can't do it, or their mind's too busy. Whereas when we reframe mindfulness as a way that we can be, a way that we can walk through the park, or, show up and play with your dog, you can do all of those things mindfully too, and that's cool. The next one is mental health. So my background's in positive psychology, and this is I guess a pet peeve for me, is people using the term mental health when they're actually describing mental ill health or a mental illness. So mental health is it's a positive state of well-being where you can think clearly, manage your own thoughts and emotions as you're moving through your day, but then also take actions based on your values, not despite life struggles, but alongside them. So when you're mentally healthy, it doesn't mean that everything is fantastic and you feel good all the time. But it does mean when things come up, you feel like you can cope with them. And when you can't, you've got space to maneuver, or people to support you, or ways that you can move around those things. And so mental health, it is a positive state, but it doesn't mean that you have to be positive all the time. That's a really big point of differentiation. And self-compassion, to be honest, self-compassion is one of my favorite pieces when I work with people. Like Crystal said, I've been doing this for 20 years. And what I find is when people start to learn to identify that self-criticism, or, just knocking themselves, berating themselves, when they learn to check that, hear it, and then call BS on it, it's a game changer. Because most of what happens, most of the bad things in most people's day aren't because there's lots and lots of bad things that happen. It's because a bad thing happened and then they doubled down on their own head about that, and often what that means about them. And so self-criticism flips that. Sorry, let me start again. Self-compassion flips self-criticism on its head. It means that you can hear it and you can navigate it differently. And that's a huge part of what we're trying to do. Before I share with you kind of my thoughts on those three aspects, though, I want to touch on this idea that capacity matters. And this, to be honest, is something that I've started bringing into the work that I do, because so often the people that I'm working with actually don't have capacity. They don't have capacity to start an exercise regime, or to start a gratitude journal, or to, improve their diet habits. What capacity means is checking where you're at and recognizing that some moments you actually need the lounge and Netflix. That's not being lazy. It's not tapping out. It's you recognizing that you have zero capacity in that moment. Imagine that your phone was on 3%, right? But you have to get to the other side of the city and you do not know your way. And so you punch in directions for where you're going. It would be ridiculous to expect your phone on 3% to get you a 45-minute drive and all of the directions to get you there. It's not fair, it's not reasonable, and you're setting yourself up for failure. And so I think often when we have these conversations about whether it's mindfulness or mental health and self-compassion, we forget this conversation around capacity, because sometimes you're not going to have capacity to do the things that I'm going to talk about next. And you have to respect that. Because if you're always trying to do more, to be more, to, whatever it might be, write in the gratitude journal, choose your focus, be kind to other people, you're just going to end up feeling stuck. And that's really, really hard. So checking your capacity and then starting to think about some of this stuff. The work that I do is all based in positive psychology. Barbara Friedrichsen, positive psychology's only been around for about 25 years. Barbara Friedrichsen is one of our researchers, and she developed this framework. It's called Broaden, Build, and Bounce Back. And I want to share the science behind this with you because, my belief is when you understand something, you don't have to go through that clunky process of trying to practice and practice and practice. Once you understand it, then it makes sense and you can do that thing, right? So, in terms of this spiral, I want you to imagine that flourishing up the top of the spiral is you on your best day. And everybody's had these days where you just feel like everything you touch turns to magic for some reason. But the bottom of the spiral is you on your worst day, when it just doesn't matter what you do, everything goes pear shaped. Now, all of us all the time move up and down that spiral, right? That's really, that's human emotions. What Friedrichsen found, though, is that when we experience a positive emotion, any positive emotion, it changes the way that our brain works. So we experience a little hit of dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, or endorphins. Now, that combo is going to change whether you run up a mountain, whether you hug a child, whether you achieve something really meaningful at work. There's going to be different neurotransmitters at play. But basically, let's imagine you're in the middle. So you're literally sitting on zero, not happy, not sad, just standing at the kitchen bench chopping onions, right? And so something happens. Maybe your dog comes in, like I've got a Cocker Spaniel. He'll run into the kitchen. He will go way too fast. He'll skid, hit the bench, then shake himself like he doesn't know what's happened. And while I'm chopping onions, I was at a zero, but now my brain opens up a little bit. I have a little giggle, I smile, and my perspective actually broadens and changes. Now, in this more open state, I'm able to learn and grow. And so it sounds innocuous because it's just like literally a dumb dog. But in that state where I learn and grow, I'm more likely to be more social. I'm more likely to be more receptive. I'm more likely to go for a walk in the afternoon simply because of that positive emotional state. And then that makes me feel good, right? And so it layers on itself. Then my daughter walks in, and instead of me going, "Oh, have you done your homework?" Now I'm like, "Hey, how was your day?" Because I've already got this little teeny bubble of positivity. And so what happens is when we experience a positive emotion, our brain opens up and then we can learn and grow. That feels good. We stretch ourselves. And then because it feels good, our brain opens up a little. Apply this to anything you've ever done and succeeded in. It could be chess, it could be cooking, it could be math, literally doesn't matter. Anything that you've kind of developed a skill at, you've used this formula. Now, on the flip side, say I'm standing at my kitchen bench and it's pouring outside. My dog has destroyed my front yard. He's now covered in mud and he looks like a sponge. I've got clients in 15 minutes at my house, and now he runs into the kitchen bench while I'm standing there chopping onions. And all of a sudden, instead of me feeling open and expansive, now I'm like just focusing in on getting my dog out of the house and cleaning my kitchen before the clients come. So my brain gives me a little bit of cortisol, a little bit of adrenaline, and this laser-like focus on the problem. Not good, not bad, just how our brains work, right? So when I'm focusing in on the problem, I'm less likely to be open, expansive, engaged when my daughter comes home from school. And as I focus in on the problem, because I'm less likely to kind of be open and expansive, I'm less likely to do things that help me grow and learn. I'm more likely to do nothing or do the things, eat the extra donut, buy that thing online that I've been thinking about for ages. And so that spiral becomes negative too, because then I buy that thing or I eat that thing or I watch that thing. And all of a sudden, now I feel a bit ick about myself and I beat myself up. And so both of these things create these spirals. What I want you to think about is how this plays out in your life and what that means, because our positive emotions have a really robust impact on how we cope in our everyday. what she found, the outcome of her research was we actually need about 3 positive emotions to every 1 negative. And so if you think about that, 3 positive emotions to every 1 negative in the modern society, that's actually kind of tricky. It's something that we have to deliberately and purposefully work towards. So, what I'd like you to do now is just think about one thing that brings you joy. And I'd like you to open up the chat, please. You see where I can find it, and just put that one thing that brings you joy in there. It could be a dog, could be a friend, could be I love cups of tea. I'm like totally a tea snob. It might be the sound of rain on a tin roof. In the chat, just share some of the things that bring you joy. Oh, little boys' hugs, that's a beautiful one. Trees through the windows. Grandkids, sunset, sunrise. What I'd like you to notice, and I'm sure these will keep trickling in, but what I'd like you to notice is what happened in your brain. Swimming in the ocean, absolutely. Your dog lying against your leg, I like that too. What I'd like you to notice is what happened to your brain when I just prompted you to think about what brings you joy. What happened? Something shifted and changed. Everything inside you started to become a little more expansive, see more possibilities, and that's really cool. So, one of the tricky things is our brain actually has a negativity bias. So, your brain, just like mine, is going to pay 3 times more attention to a negative emotion or event than a positive, which is really, really crap. Right. So this was when we were in Tasmania, a walk called the Tarn Shelf. And as you can see, there's these beautiful glacial lakes up the top of the mountains. It was a sunny day, the kids were laughing. And then just up a bit further, there was a snake that crossed our path. What happened inside my brain when that snake crossed the path? Right, instantly it deleted, distorted, or generalized the 3 positive things. It doesn't matter if there's a pretty lake. It doesn't matter if there's a sound of laughter. My brain just had to get rid of that because the snake meant survival. In your life, emails, meetings, doctor's appointments, all of these things have become snakes. Your brain can't tell the difference. And so our negativity bias means that we're actually paying more attention to those things than they really deserve. It's just a hangover from our ancestors. But we can check that when we become more discerning about what we're thinking. We can actually check that, and that's kind of cool. So, a lot of this is about choosing where your focus is. Because when you notice what's good, what's positive, what's affirming in your life, everything changes. And so, when we think about mental health, I think so often we get kind of trapped in this conundrum of feeling like we don't have control over something. And focus, along with mindfulness, is something that you can strengthen and something that you can build. And so, what I'd like you to do now is just with your left hand, if you want to pop your left hand in front of you, and just take a deep breath. And just for a moment, just notice your left hand. Not complicated. Don't overthink it. There might be, I mean, mine's got quite a few wrinkles. There might be some calluses. There might be freckles, moles, lumpy bits, veins. There could be rings, nice fingers. Just get curious for a moment. And as you do that, just breathe deeply. Just noticing it. And just scrunch your hand and notice how it feels. And open your hand. And taking a deep breath, just coming back to the present moment, moving your hand, let it go, and just shaking that out. But what you did was you deliberately then, hopefully, deliberately chose your focus. And that's really the heart of mindfulness. One of the things our brain does is it constantly narrates what's going on for us. And so let's imagine that you want to do something different, like learn the guitar. And as you start learning, your brain keeps going, wow, you're not very good at that. Oh my gosh, you're never going to get this. How hard are those chords? Your fingers, those fingers that were perfect a moment ago, your fingers aren't remembering this. It's clunky and awkward. And so, what some of the research suggests is that when we get feedback that's negative, and when we focus on that, our performance actually drops by around 26%. And so if you think about, and this is not necessarily learning the guitar, it might be when you're lacking capacity and you're just trying to get to the doctor's appointment, or you just need to get the shopping done or the dog to the vet. Some of the things that used to feel basic, but if you start beating yourself up about them, you're actually making it a whole lot harder. Whereas if you can start noticing even the small parts that you are doing well, it might be that, you know what, today you don't have capacity, but you did ring and cancel because that's who you are. You're always respectful. And so when you notice what you are doing well and how you're showing up, it lifts us. Imagine if somebody was walking behind a small child who was learning to ride a bike and they were whispering quietly in their ear, "You're really crap at that. You're terrible at bike riding. You're not sporty, are you?" Eventually, their confidence, their motivation, and their resilience would plummet. But worse than that, the internal voice that they pick up would become that critical, negative self doubt. And so, when we can shift that internal voice to start to notice what we're doing well, it can be a huge game changer. So, let me touch a little on self compassion. Like I mentioned, this is for me one of my favorite pieces to work with. Kristen Neff's research talks about 3 layers of self compassion. The first is mindful awareness, which is basically recognizing that what you're doing right now is hard. The struggle is real, the capacity that you have is limited, and anybody else in a similar situation would probably be where you're at. Okay, so that's our mindful awareness. Common humanity is a recognition and acceptance that you're not in this alone. There are other people that are, in a similar circumstance and they're navigating similar struggles. Sometimes when we beat ourselves up, we actually feel like we're the only ones. Whereas common humanity is really saying, actually, there is this beautiful association of all of these people going through similar struggles and they get it. Now, the kicker here is kindness to self. When you think about being kind to yourself, it's really trying to treat yourself the way that you would a loved one or a good friend. Self-compassion isn't about giving yourself a free ride every time because Netflix seems like a more fun option than actually going for a walk. That's not self-compassion. Self-compassion is not mowing down a cheesecake because you feel sad, right? Also not self-compassion. Self-compassion is doing things that are kind for you. The litmus test that I'd like to add is it needs to be good for you today and good for you tomorrow. So what are some of the things that you do that are kind for you? What does that look like? And really, maybe you can write something down just quickly. Some of those acts of kindness that you can do when you are struggling, when things are tough, instead of beating yourself up and getting into that negative spiral, actually saying, hang on, that's not going to help. How can I be kind to myself in this moment? Because you're meant to feel all of this stuff, right? As a human being, you are literally meant to experience elation and joy and love and excitement and despair, frustration, anger, disappointment, depression. All of those things make you a normal human. I want you to think about that for a minute, because in modern society, we've tried to make the negative stuff the wrong stuff, and it's not. It's part of the human condition. And so when we normalize all of these emotions, it actually makes it easier to accept what they are. A big part of, I think, self-compassion, or the starting point, is respecting what you're feeling. And I talk to clients about this phrase is, right now I'm feeling whatever it is, clunky, anxious, disappointed, overwhelmed, fill in the blank, and that's totally okay. The moment you say that to yourself, you shift the struggle with the negative emotion. And so much of, that mental illness can be defined by the struggle inside, internally, with the negative thoughts and the negative emotion. So if we can learn to accept it, it just completely changes the dynamic about how we feel. We can feel sad, but we don't need to be overwhelmed by sadness. We can feel disappointed, but that doesn't have to define what we do or don't do next. And I want to finally touch on self-care. So if you think about the candle, the flame is your capacity to shine bright, support, help others. But without the wax, the candle would literally burn out. And so I want you to think of self-care, the things that you do for you, as the wax. They're incredibly important. And so thinking about, what are the things that you do that are kind for you and that nurture you? So just remembering a couple of things. Respect your capacity first before you think about anything else. Be discerning about your focus, and then try to practice self-compassion. And at the end of the day, it's one step at a time, right? It is literally one step at a time. So thank you for listening. Hopefully there's something there that's been helpful, but I'll hand back over to Crystal.
Thank you so much, Jodie, for that presentation. I was jotting down actually notes while you were going through that, and some of the things that resonated for me was respecting your capacity, normalizing emotions, and the 3-to-1 ratio of positive emotions to negative. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. All right. All right, so we are now very pleased to be joined today by our member, Lee Derby. He is a carer to a 5-year-old daughter who was diagnosed with PID at 2 years old. He enjoys supporting and assisting with spreading awareness around primary immunodeficiency. Lee, I'll hand over to you now, and thanks for being with us today.
Awesome. Thanks, Crystal. I appreciate get that photo off the screen. So that's good. But I just so thank you for the opportunity. I was just going to quickly talk about a couple of things that we've come across as parents and carers in terms of mental health, self-compassion. And just wanted to kind of use two main examples of what that looks like, and how we've developed, and what approaches we've used to maintain good mental health. So the first one, which is probably very similar to any parent or carer, is medication. So that was a massive adjustment after Ebony was diagnosed. She was on a daily antibiotic and a daily antifungal. Being a 2-year-old, she didn't want to take it. As simple as that. It was, and that probably proceeded for about 6 months of us trying to get these medications into her, us getting more and more stressed about it, anxiety increasing. I was still, one of Jodie's terms, and languishing twice a day in this feeling of she needs it. We're trying to get it into her, and just not succeeding. So that probably went for about 6 months. What we've ended up doing is just being very self-aware of we're not going to get 100% of the time, 100% correct 100% of the time. We're just not. It's just not something that is realistic and feasible. And when we kind of got to that stage through those 6 months, everything did get a lot easier. We did find better solutions for getting her meds into her, and there's that less stress that twice a day for our own existence. So she's not feeling that, we're not feeling that. So I guess that's a pretty common theme through it is really for us was accepting that we're not going to get 100% correct 100% of the time. And that has, yeah, that's helped us. The second kind of example, and ways that we've and then to outline the ways we've managed to yeah maintain that mental health is the first cough basically is it. So as a parent, you become hypersensitive to when your a child gets sick, and even more so when they have a immune deficiency. So that first cough is obviously anxiety provoking, and you kind of that switch gets flicked in your brain into that control mode. What we found was really difficult is we have, and I think Jody, you kind of mentioned on it before, was we have very limited control over this situation, and that just escalates and makes it that anxiety and that stress level increase as well. For us, me and Amanda, Ebony's mum, we're two very different people in how we've approached dealing with that. For me, it was around uh, knowledge. So when she was first diagnosed, I spent hours reading journal articles and case reports and becoming, learning about the immune system, what her specific deficiency would do, so that there gets to a point where there's that first cough, and I'm not a doctor, but I'm pretty confident in being able to say, oh, that's just a bit of inflammation at the moment. It's nothing to be overly. It's keep an eye on it, but nothing to be overly concerned. And if that cough does change, then we've got that knowledge behind us to go right. Time to see the GP. Time to get into the specialist for that. So my coping mechanism, or try to work it out, was around knowledge and just getting my head around everything as best I could. Amanda was more with the practical side of things. So it was humidifiers, air purifiers, salt rooms, Yuki Bear, Vicks Vapor Rub type stuff. It was more that practical side of things. And again, that led her to being able to have a concept, if only a concept of I've got some control in this situation that I have no control over, effectively. And so, and again, we've made mistakes along the way, and kind of gone, we've gone far one way with hearing that first cough and straight down to the emergency room to being able to actually do it. So we've made mistakes along the way, but in coming back to that 100%, 100 of the time, we've managed to go, well, parenting, caring is about making mistakes and acknowledging that. Yes, the outcomes can be a little bit different for us in terms of Ebony, but we are going to make mistakes, and we got to be kind to ourselves in order to make sure that we A, learn from it, we don't, and then B, don't repeat them. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to kind of put it into a outline our experiences and how it is a stressful situation, and acknowledging that it's a stressful situation, but we have found ways of making it easier for ourselves in those strategies that we've got, and having that bit of self-compassion and saying, yeah, we're going to get it wrong. We will. But we're going to try to do better next time. And and hopefully, fingers crossed, everything continues to improve. So that that's me, Crystal, if that's all right.
Oh, thank you so much, Lee. Yes, no, I appreciate it. I really do. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. I know it's not easy, but it is helpful, especially when there are others who are in the same boat, experiencing the same things. And it's, you mentioned anxiety a fair bit, the stress, which I think would resonate with everybody. But finding those approaches, like with you, with the knowledge, and then with your wife doing the practical approach, I guess, finding the strengths in different areas to manage the situation, which is, always helpful as well. So thank you so much. Okay, next up, I'd now like to warmly welcome Elizabeth Ranger, co-director of Open Ground. Elizabeth, also known as Libba, is an experienced trauma-informed physiotherapist and director of Open Ground, and is one of the first people trained to teach MBSR in Australia. She has worked for Open Ground for the past 16 years as a teacher and the director of organisational programs. In this capacity, she has led many successful mindfulness and leadership programs to all levels of organisations, such as Deakin University, Royal Prince Alfred Hospital, Anglicare as well. She has also pioneered the Mindfulness for Veterans program and led the first 8-week mindfulness course to federal parliamentarians and staffers. Libba brings a very down-to-earth manner to all her teachings, with much warmth and a sense of humour, and has long practice experience in the Asana tradition. I'm sorry, Libba, I'm sure I butchered that. I didn't say it
The
right.
insight tradition. Don't
Thank
worry
you.
about any of that, Crystal. That's enough. You don't really.
Oh, okay. No, but thank you.
Yeah.
So I'll hand over to you, Libba, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Crystal. And thanks everyone so far, for especially Jodie and Lee. I've really been struck and moved by what you've shared, and I'm hoping that this is more the experiential part of the session, where we're actually going to do a mindfulness and compassion practice. But hopefully, I did want to say something a little bit about it just as an intro, and Jodie's really beautifully articulated, given us a kind of understanding and introduction to mindfulness and both self-compassion. But just because we're going to do a practice, I thought I'd give you a few more kind of, a bit more guidance. So I'll just share, I've just got a definition that's not, again, this is not a technical one. But, can you see that? Oh, but it's not in, is it not in full screen mode? Is that the problem?
Yes, Libba, we can see it. It's just not in full screen mode.
Okay, now I can't see it. You know what, Matt? Look, that's the definition that really matters. Don't I just, for some reason I can't slide it up to get into full screen mode. But essentially, when I talk about mindfulness, what I'm really talking about, this is something that can both be a technique, so something that we can actually practice and set aside time to do, to train our minds in this way, so do formal meditation practice. But also, this is what Jodie really touched on, mindfulness is also a way of being in the world. So you can do anything and everything mindfully, actually. But this definition talks about mindfulness as the awareness that arises out of paying attention. And in particular, there are 3 components to how we're paying attention. And the first is that we're paying attention on purpose. So again, Jodie touched on this real intention to pay attention. So often it's talked about as a practice of waking up, a practice of wakefulness. But then the second component's really interesting because it's where we direct our attention, which is to this present moment. And that can be very helpful because, we've got these minds that are very good at time travel and so quickly race off into the future, or you're ruminating about the past and what you shouldn't have done. And, as Lee was saying, and I can only imagine, for those of you dealing with children or yourselves with these chronic conditions, when there are, symptoms that arise, that's kind of worrying that happens, the speculating, the anticipating, the planning, the catastrophizing. And so off we go. And yet we actually miss out on this present moment. So in mindfulness practice, we're really paying attention to what's actually arising in the present moment. And it helps us savor more moments of life, especially the good stuff. So again, Jody touched on that internal negativity bias we have. And often, because we've got this negativity bias, often if we're not present, our mind will jump to the things that are worrying or concerning us as well. So it can be really helpful to interrupt that and bring the attention back to what's actually here right now. And it can also interrupt spirals of reactivity, actually, if you can catch it, if you start to be aware, I'm not present. So that's why we train our mind in this way. And the interesting thing, well, the good thing is it can help you be more present for the good stuff, the pleasant. And so, as Jody touched on, that's so good for our nervous system, dopamine, and has a really positive impact on our state of mind. But also, and this is sometimes overlooked, mindfulness is also about how do we be present even in the challenging, difficult moments. And that's more difficult because we're hardwired to move away from difficult experience, to get rid of it. And, if there are practical things you can do to do that, that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? But if some of these kind of difficult experiences or negative experiences are actually just the way you're thinking about things or challenging emotions, then trying to get away from what's actually inside can create more stress and distress in the system. So with mindfulness practice, we're learning how do we be present with whatever's arising with as much curiosity as possible and not wanting it to be different. Because if you think about it, most of our angst and our stress comes from wanting things to be different than how they are. And Lee touched on this actually with the medication and that moment of like when you accepted, we're not going to be perfect. Okay, we're not going to do twice a day. And how much stress then falls away. So it's the lovely thing about it is it's really about just letting ourselves be exactly as we are. It's not about the ideal, but really what's real, like what we're really feeling. And Jody said that too, like what I'm feeling, and it's okay to feel that. Of course, these emotions arise given the circumstances that are arising in our histories, etc. So we're really learning how to be present even when the heat gets turned up. And because that is difficult, this is where the third component's so helpful, like how to turn towards our experience. And it says non-judgmentally, but it's very hard to not be judgmental at all because, again, we're hardwired to evaluate stuff like, yep, this is good, I'm going to approach, oh, that looks dodgy, I'm going to step back. But what we're doing in our practice is rather than being swept up in the judgments, can we notice them but still continue to be open and curious as to what's here? And that helps us lean in when other forces are pulling us away. So the idea is that no matter what arises, even if you don't like what's here, can you be curious? And that just helps you open to new possibilities. And over time, what happens is we start to bear a wider range of our emotional experience with less reactivity. So we're really cultivating this curiosity, this openness, and in time, friendliness. And again, this is really the beginnings of the self-compassion stuff that, the more we can befriend what's here, including all the different aspects of ourselves that arise, the more understanding there is, the more compassion there is, and this kind of getting to know this human condition, which we all share. So that's what we'll be doing in the practice. And then we will also be doing, sending some well wishes to others, doing a bit of self-compassion or compassion practice. And that can sometimes feel a bit awkward for some people. Some people love it. And just to say, just let yourself be how you are. So if you don't connect to the words, don't worry about it. It's just that we're orienting our mind in that direction. So you can almost see it as you're just planting seeds and see what grows. And similarly, when we get into the mindfulness practice, Once, I'll guide you through it, and there'll be objects of attention that you'll pay attention to, but chances are your mind's going to wander. It doesn't actually matter that the mind wanders. What matters is you notice where it's gone to, and then you just bring it back. And ideally with as less judgment as possible, because that also, each time you notice the mind's wandered and you bring it back, that's a moment of mindfulness. And it also gives you an opportunity to practice not being judgmental and harsh and critical with yourselves. So it's actually part of the practice. And if you notice it's wandered and you come back, you can kind of pat yourself on the shoulder. You've done a good job. So let's settle in. We don't have lots of time, but yeah, and you can just sit comfortably. So maybe just having your feet flat on the floor if you're sitting in a chair, the weight evenly distributed between both feet. And you can close eyes if that feels comfortable, or if that feels a little weird, you can just soften the gaze towards the floor. And just beginning by noticing whatever's front and center in the mind right now. No need to push anything away, just noticing all that you're feeling, thoughts may be passing through. And then quite deliberately, just shifting attention so that you're paying attention to the immediacy of the physical sensations of your posture. So if you're sitting, you might notice the sensations generated by the contact of the feet with the ground, soles of your shoes, your socks. Could even sense into the sit bones. Could even have a felt sense of just being able to sink down into the support of the chair or whatever's supporting you. So as to access both a felt sense of groundedness and balance, particularly through the lower part of the body. You could also feel into the length of the spine. So we're sitting tall, and yet we're also trying to find that sweet spot between being grounded and awake, but also at ease. So you don't have to sit too rigidly, just noticing if there are any parts of the body that can soften a little. Soften the eyes, the face. Letting the shoulders, the belly be soft. Could also sense the touch of clothing against the skin. Even the touch of air, perhaps. And then turning attention to the touch of air as it flows in and out of the body. this process we call breathing. You don't have to breathe in a particular way, just trusting that the body knows how to breathe, and we're simply being present for each and every moment of this breath. You might notice that moment it first begins, sensing how the body gently swells a little with the in-breath. Softens a little with the out-breath. Whether you can sense breathing at the nostrils, perhaps in the rising or falling of the chest area. Or the expansion of the belly. And then just shifting attention now and bringing to mind someone who's very easy to love, that you feel a lot of affection or fond for. And also knowing, just by virtue of being human, they probably have their own hopes, dreams, also challenges and difficulties. And just holding them in heart and mind as you send them some well wishes, and you can use my words or find your own. Just sending them good wishes. May they be as healthy and as happy as is possible. And may they find the strength and resources they need to meet their challenges. And may they also experience more ease and peace, joy and freedom. Their minds, bodies and hearts. Perhaps noticing what's happening in your own mind, body and heart as you wish this loved one well. You feel connected to this, disconnected, if there's some softening, melting happening, or some bracing, contractions. And then bringing yourself to mind, and you know only too well all the steps you've taken so far in life, all that's on your plate that you're grappling with. And can you offer yourself some kindness, some compassion, some understanding for all the efforts you're making to take care of your life as best you can? And wishing yourself well. May I be as happy and as healthy as is possible right now. find the strength, the resources I need to attend to all of life's challenges. And may I too find more ease and peace, joy and freedom. And from here, just letting these wishes radiate out as far as feels comfortable, whether it be to your inner circle, to all of these people sharing this space, or even further beyond. May all beings live with more ease and peace. So I hope that was helpful, and I know we're out of time, but yeah, interested in anyone's thoughts. So thanks, Crystal.
Thank you so much, Liva. I've got to say, I do feel much more relaxed than when we started. I did find it interesting that as I was going into that practice mode, I really struggled to actually close off my mind and stay present. There was a lot of things circling in my brain about things I have to get done, things I have to do, all these to-do lists. But then as I focused in on just the breathing, that really helped shut a few of those thoughts down, which was quite pleasant. So thank you. Okay. So as part of today's webinar, we'd like to share some helpful mindfulness resources. You can explore more practices and information at Open Ground. In addition, the Hello Now app available for download via the App Store or through www.hellonowapp.com. And there's offers of free guided mindfulness and practices that you can access anytime. We'd also just like to thank CSL and Grifols for sponsoring the Immunodeficiency Insights webinar series. And thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Thank you, everybody, and good night.